Lord willing, it's not too long. Lord willing, we just deal with the point and keep it moving. If you get it, you get it. If you don't, hey, I can't force you. Shalom, family, shalom. I don't know if y'all can hear me. We're going to deal, Lord willing, with multiple points. The main one that I can't get off my head now is Revelation, the 12th chapter. I was trying to prepare a lesson, to do lessons and do a live, but when I went on TikTok to see if, the brothers are great millstone, some of the brothers was on there. I seen a brother on there doing his live, so some people was going left, right, left, trigger, square. You had some people that was Baptist. You had some people that didn't even know what the hell was going on, right? So I'm going to face the east, and I'm going to give all praises to the one true power, Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakakwadash. Double honors to the elder apostles and the elders of great millstone who rule well and teach well through the spirit. And a mighty shalom to the hopeful elect in the same spirit and in sound doctrine. Lord willing that you'll all continue to pursue sound doctrine and 100% truth. Shalom to the Akwath, the sisters of this faith. Lord willing, you continue to pursue your lot, which is being a loving and silent and virtuous wife. Lord willing, Yahweh Shem Shai has mercy on the other brothers and sisters that's not in the faith. If you keep seeing me look around, I'm looking for a dog. These ladies is looking for some dog. I don't know how they let that damn dog get loose, but I seen it somewhere over here, so hey, I don't know. But we're going to get into multiple topics, right? You see the title, we believe in the whole volume of the book. Everybody else don't. The main point that I'm stuck on is where brothers brought out Revelation 12 and was using verse 7 or verse 4, saying that was a literal dragon. No, the hell it wasn't. It was a vision from John the Revelator, and it's different points, right? You got the time of the peak of Rome during Herod. Then you got the end time dealing with Michael, the archangel, fighting the dragon. And then you got the time of when Rome fell, or when Rome in the time of Vespasian and Titus destroyed the temple, right? And the Israelites fled to the mountains, the African mountains. Brothers didn't want to receive it. I'm not here to force anybody to believe in anything. I come here to teach the word. You have to be willing to be a student. How can you cut something you don't even understand? We've been in Christianity. We understand the bullshit. We understand where you're going to go. You believe Satan was a high angel and he took a third of the angels with him down here on earth. No, that's wrong, right? So I'm going to be going in my phone a lot because I have a lot of my notes or my points in my phone. So you see me going to my phone is either me getting precepts or getting certain points. So let's go to this. Revelations, the 12th chapter. Verse 1. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, right? So again, this is a vision of John the Revelator through the Spirit, right? When you go to Revelation 19, the Spirit, right? The testimony of Yahweh Shai is the spirit of prophecy. So the vision of John the Revelator through the Rakakwadash. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. Now this woman is a metaphor symbolic to Israel as a whole, right? So the woman represents the nation of Israel often symbolized as a woman in the scriptures. So when we go to Jeremiah, I want to keep my Bible, my physical right there. Jeremiah, the 6th chapter, verse 2. It says, I have likened the daughter of Zion to a comely and delicate woman. Right? This is why when we see in Revelations 12, you see the moon and the sun, different characteristics. When we go to Isaiah 54, verse 5 and 6, it says, for thy maker is thy husband, Yahweh of hosts is his name, thy Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel, the Most High of the whole earth shall he be called. For Yahweh have called thee as a woman, forsaken and grieved in spirit, in a wife of youth, when thou was refused, saith the Most High. Now, even within this chapter, we see she's grieved because she wants to be delivered. Even more, when we look at Israel through all captivities, what did they do? They cried to Yahweh for a deliverer. The book of Judges is the best example, but in all captivities, Israel, when they start coming to their senses, start calling on Yahweh by Hashem Yahweh Shai to help them. Just like what the elect is doing now, Isaiah chapter 9, verse 4, those that sigh and cry. The men are first crying, and then you women and other men and children that's waking up, you start to pray unto the Lord and cry on what these adversaries, these wicked rulers have done. You even crying to the Lord about Jake, right? So, when we go back to Revelations chapter 12, verse 1, a woman clothed with the sun, which we can symbolize Israel is covered with the glory of righteousness of Yahweh. Psalms 84, verse 11, for Yahweh is a sun and shield. The moon under her feet, through the Spirit, could represent the law and the ordinance and wisdom given to Yasharallah, which governs as the moon reflects the sun, the light. But, what governs us? The law, statutes, and commandments. So, when we look at the last part, which is the important part, where it says, upon her head a crown of 12 stars. The 12 stars is symbolic to the 12 tribes of Israel. Let's read Genesis, the 37th chapter. And we're going to read verse 9 and 10. This is Genesis chapter 37, verse 9 and 10. Let me see. Just so you know, this is Joseph. I'm going to read verse 5. And Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it to his brethren, and they hated him yet the more. So let's go to the point. So now that you know, this is Joseph's dream. Verse 9. And he dreamed yet another dream, and told it to his brethren, and said, behold, I have dreamed a dream more, and behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obstinance to me. Right? He's the 12th. And he told it to his father and his brethren, and his father rebuked him and said unto him, what is this dream that thou hast dreamed? Shall I and thy mother and thy brother indeed come to bow down ourselves to thee to the earth? So I just want to show, it said stars. Do you believe in Jesus? If not, just read it and remain silent. Do I believe in Jesus? Jesus is not real, right? That's a made-up character. But when you go into the Bible and you actually understand what happened in circular history and prophecy, and if you understand that Jesus, or JC, was a Hebrew Israelite, he had a Hebrew name, and his name was Yahweh Shai. It was not Jesus. Jesus is not real. Sorry, the J's got created in the 1500s, so what was his name before? On the cross, it was written in Hebrew. Hebrew was the first name. Greek because that was the popular language at that time, Latin, because the Romans majority spoke Latin. So what was his Hebrew name, since that was the first name on there? Yahweh Shai. Thank you very much. So maybe you should remain silent. Woo! Feel good today. So we see upon her head in Revelations 12, a crown of 12 stars represents the 12 tribes of Israel. No, I'm not a Mormon. You didn't hear me say Mormon. I'm a Hebrew Israelite. So when you go to verse 2, it says, and she, being with child, cried, travailing in birth, and pain to be delivered. Right? And this is really, as a metaphor, pain to be delivered is speaking of the 12 tribes. Pain to be delivered from what? Yeah, he was a Hebrew Israelite. Pain to be delivered, right? If we look, especially in prophecy, we went to verse 1, that was symbolizing the nation of Israel, Yasharella, right? The 12 tribes of Israel. So when we go to verse 3, it says, you know what, because of the wind about to make this long. We're going to make this longer. If I need something, I'll go to it. This is Revelation chapter 12, verse 3 and 4. It says, and there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads. And his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven. So before we even deal with verse 4, we have to deal with verse 3. What? I didn't even say nothing about hate. I said I'm a Hebrew Israelite, and I said Jesus is not real. You really don't understand the Bible, so I'm about to put you in timeout. That's what my mama always said. You put them in timeout, right? You just put them in timeout. They'll understand. Jesus is real. Prove me wrong. Jesus, what is his real name? Jesus is a made-up name. What does Jesus' name mean in Hebrew? The understanding of JC means earth dirt. But if you go into scriptures, his name is supposed to mean he saves, he redeems. When you go into Hebrew words, they have meaning. That name Jesus got created. That's not his original name. So if you actually study, you would dissect the actual truth. Really, you would be taught what his name is. So this is not a back and forth. His name is Yahweh Shai. Regardless if you believe it or not, if you want to learn it, you can learn it. But if you don't, practice Amos 3 and 3. If two can be agreed, they can walk together. If you want to say his name, JC, walk with that. Lord willing, that helps you. If not, I can't help you. So we're dealing with the point. And there appeared another wonder in heaven. Behold, a great red dragon. First, who is the red dragon? The red represents Edom. The red dragon as a whole represents Roman Empire, the spiritual power of Satan operating through Rome. But when you go into that red, let's go to Genesis. What nation was truly described as being red? This is how you dissect the scriptures. Because you could take a verse, give understanding, but you got to go precept upon precept to each point to make sure it makes sense. So Genesis 25, verse 22. And the children struggled together within her, and she said, if it be so, why am I thus? And she went to inquire of the Lord. To inquire, that means she went to go get a message from the Lord. And how did she go get a message? By the prophets. Or really, in the ancient time, they were called seers. 1 Samuel chapter 9, verse 9. Seer is a visionary. So she went to a prophet, and Yahweh Shema Shai said unto her, this is not literal. A prophet told her what the Lord said. Two nations are in thy womb, two manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels. And the one people shall be stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger. And when her days to be delivered were fulfilled, so the prophecy was about verse 3, but now verse 24, now her delivery was about to be fulfilled. Beloved, there were twins in her womb. They were not identical. The first came out red all over like a hairy garment, and they called his name Esau. Red because you could see the blood pigment through his skin. That's why he was red like a hairy garment. Even though what we would say most babies, but when you look at that time, this is being direct to separate the nations. If they were twins, let's look at the next verse. And after that came his brother out, and his hand took hold of Esau's heel, and his name was called Jacob. And Isaac was 80 years old when she bare them. So if they were identical, why did it not describe that Jacob came out hairy, red all over, like he came out red like a hairy garment? Because Jacob came out a different shade, let alone he had a different texture, smooth skin. He was a plain man, because later on in this chapter, and even in the 26th chapter, where Isaac was about to, I think the 27th chapter, Isaac was about to give a blessing to Esau. Jacob's mother knew what the prophet told her. So she had to rethink and say, yo, Jacob, do everything that I tell you. So she made him to get something hairy to be symbolic to Esau's arm. Now Isaac was like, wait, how did you get that venison so quick? Come here so I could feel your arm to see if you really Esau. So Isaac was blind, so he wasn't looking at the pigment. He was looking at the hairy definition of his body, because that was going to give him the identification of Esau. Because Jacob had smooth skin. He told his mom, I have smooth skin. Jacob is a hairy man. Okay? So when we go into verse 4 in Revelations, when we go into verse 4 into Revelations, the 12th chapter, we're going to get more understanding on it being Rome. But I want to drop down to Revelations 12 and 9, because the point that we said, we already went to Genesis, the 25th chapter, to show red was directed to Edom, right? But if we go into circular history, who ruled the Greek Empire and the Roman Empire? It was Edomites, especially when the Israelites was in the hands of the Romans, right? They were Edomites. The king, who is Herod was an Idumean, which is an Edomite. So Revelations 12 and 9, just to back up that the red dragon is symbolic to Edom, the Roman Empire, that basically that spiritual power of Satan operating through Rome. Why are we saying operating through Rome? Because when you go through verse 1 down, you have to understand that that's dealing with Rome. And I'm gonna clear up the points. So Revelations 12 and 9. The great dragon, which is talking about Rome, was cast out. The old serpent. That old serpent is speaking about the serpent in the book of Genesis. The serpent that beguiled Eve. The same spirit that was in that nation or that man, that same spirit, because you have to know, when you die, your spirit go back to the Father, and the Father sends it back down. Of course, it's going to be in another vessel. So that serpent was a man, a nation. Then eventually Cain and Abel came into play. That same spirit in the serpent was in Cain. Cain was a murderer. Murdering your own brother is a sin. That was that same deity of the serpent. That's why it said in certain precepts, you are of your father the devil. He was a murderer in the beginning. The first murderer was Cain. he had that spiritual deity of the serpent. Then later on, which history merely repeats itself, Cain and Abel was symbolic to the righteous seed and the unrighteous seed, or the wicked seed, which accumulated Jacob and Esau. For those that get it, they get it. For those that don't, I'm not here to force you. We just getting this information. So the great dragon was cast out, the old serpent called the devil. Devil means manipulator, liar, and deceiver. There's only one true nation that fits that role. And Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. So the spiritual deity Satan is on the left-hand side of Yahweh, which is a sinister. Sinister means left hand or left side. Go look it up on etymology online. Type in the word sinister. Two of the meanings is left hand or left side. Okay? Satan is the left hand angel on the left hand side of the Heavenly Father that's working out the wickedness in the earth. Because it said, Satan which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Right? And this is not speaking of the Heavenly Father's throne, right? Because eventually Rome is going to fall from power, right? Later on, when we go into the detail, like when we go into other prophecies, when Rome fell, when they had a huge collapse, Revelations 20 come into play. When Rome fell, they were cast into the bottomless pit. And when it says like heaven, it's speaking about its rulership, okay? But it's a point I wanted to get to, which deceiveth the whole world. Let me get this in 2 Corinthians, the 4th chapter. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 4. In whom the God of this world hath blinded the minds of them which believe not, lest the light of the glorious gospel of Mashiach, who is the image of the Most High, should shine unto them. Right? The God of this world, right, is a spiritual deity, the left-hand side, and the physical counterpart, which is the physical attribute of a God. Because even Esau is a god of the earth, right? He's making his laws, his legislation, right? We have law and order on the earth, right? Education, health, right? Everything is in his hands. He controls. In the ancient world, what did most emperors and rulers call themselves? I am a god. And it says a little g. You know? So you have a spiritual deity and a physical deity. Just like you have a righteous angel on the right-hand side of Father, and you have a physical deity on the earth that is walking in righteousness, which is truly the elect of Israel. Okay? So now, we already read it. We went to Genesis 25:25. It says Esau came out red. What does the 7 heads represent? 7 kingdoms or empires of Esau's power through history. What is the name of these? Greece, Rome, Spain, French, Germany, Salaki. The 7 heads is the Greece, Rome, the Spanish, the French, Germany Major, Germany Minor, and the British. Those are the 7 heads, which birthed America, because America had to go through 3 wars: the French, the Spanish, and the British War. Okay, the 10 horns, which is synonymous with Daniel the 7th chapter, the 7th verse, and the 8th verse, which in the revival goes into NATO, the European Union. Okay? So we dealt with that. Go to Daniel the 7th chapter, and it says the same thing for the 4th beast. Daniel 7:23, that's a future point of the 4th beast, because the 4th beast did not devour the whole earth. It devoured the known lands that it ruled. So the 4th beast is a continuation in the 8th verse. I just have to say that because I did tell you to read Daniel 7, verse 7 and 8. So when we go back to Revelations I gave you the understanding of verse 3. You should be following along if you can. Verse 4. And his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven. Who is this speaking about? Right? This is speaking the third part of the stars of heaven. This refers to the Israelites or tribes taken down by Rome, particularly Judah, Benjamin, and Levi under the Roman rule, right? So I'm about to read 2 points that I can get. The first one I'm going to get is Matthew, the first chapter. I'm just going to stick to the point. You can read further down if you want, but this is the point. Matthew chapter 2, verse 16. Then Herod, when he saw that he was mocked of the wise men, because earlier in the chapter, Herod was hearing of a star that was going to rise in the time of the birth of the Messiah. So he told these wise men to go search where you're going to see the star at and come back so that I can worship the Messiah. But really, he was being deceitful, because really in his heart, he wanted to kill the Son of God. And even Salaki. So even when you go, I just want to show you. So this is verse 11. It says, and when they were coming to the house, they saw the young child with Mary, his mother, and fell down to worship him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented unto him gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And being warned of the Most High in a dream. So these three wise men was warned in a dream that they should not return to Herod. They departed into their own country another way. And when they were departed, behold, the angel of Yahweh Bashim Shai appeareth to Joseph in a dream, saying, arise, and take the young child and his mother, and flee to Egypt. And be thou there until I bring thee word, for Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. That was the whole point for the wise men to go to tell him. The wise men had their own agenda. They wanted to go see, and of course they told Herod, but then Herod was like, hey, when you find him, let me know so I can worship him. So the Spirit of the Lord said, don't go back. Why? Because the Lord knew the heart of Herod, right? Because Herod was knowing that a king was going to rise. But that wasn't the time for Yahweh Shai to be on the throne. You know, that's why it wasn't fulfilled for Herod to slay Yahweh Shai, because that was later on. That was for later on. Okay? So when we drop down to 16, just so we can stay on point, then Herod, when he saw that he was mocked of the wise men, was exceeding wroth, and sent forth and slew all the children that were in Bethlehem, and in all the coast thereof, from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had diligently inquired of the wise men. So he slew all the children that were in Bethlehem and in all the coasts thereof that pertained to Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. Right? Let's read Luke 21. Luke 21, verse 24. And they all fell by the sword. Wait, hold on. Starting at verse 22. For these be the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. So even by John the Revelator, what was actually said was being fulfilled in the time when Yahushua was born. But woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. For there shall be great distress in the land, wrath upon this people, and they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations. And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. Right? Because later on, what fully happened? Right? Because when we even when you deal with Yahushai being afflicted, later on, because we already read in Matthew, when Yahushai, when he was born, they was the children that was surround, really Benjamin, but Benjamin, Judah, and Levi was getting afflicted because of Herod's decree. But later on in this same verse, really going into the third part of the stars of heaven, this is reference when basically in a time where the third temple was taken down. Let me actually go up a little higher. This is Luke chapter 21, verse 19. In your patience possess ye your souls. And when ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then how that the desolation thereof is nigh. Then let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let them which are in the midst of it depart out, and let not them that are in the countries enter thereto. For these be the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. Right? In this, when you even look, when we go back to Revelations, because remember from verse 1 to 2, it was speaking about that's the nation of Israel. Verse 4, and his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven and did cast them into the earth, and the dragon stood before the women, which is really speaking about Israel. I just wanted to show you who is the tail, because if the dragon is Rome, the tail is going back to Herod. But when you really go into the history or circular history, when else did Benjamin, Judah, and Levi get afflicted? This was in the time when the temple was getting destroyed, right? So when we really look at this, his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven. Who was ruling? Vespasian and Titus, which is the Roman emperors, right? Actually, let me see if I could do this. In the time of Titus and Vespasian, what king was ruling Judea? I probably said his name probably incorrectly. So I'm about to show you. So I kind of went to show a point where even at the time of Yahushai, where where Judah, Benjamin, and Levi was afflicted by Herod. But then you have an actual time where Yahushai prophesied that one stone wouldn't be left. When you actually understand in circular history, the Roman seized Jerusalem around 66-73 AD, when Titus and his father Vespasian led the Roman armies against Judea during what is called the First Jewish-Roman War. There's no such thing as Jewish, the Jews. Vespasian was first a Roman general and sent by Emperor Nero in 66 AD to crush the Jew revolt in Judea. Because who was bumping up against Rome? Freaking Sakari, right? It says, and his son Titus served under him and later took command with Vespasian when Vespasian became emperor. By this time, there was no independent Jew leader or Jew king ruling Judea. The Herodian dynasty, descendants of Herod the Great, had already lost most power. The last Herodian ruler with any authority over parts of the land was Herod Agrippa II, the great-grandson of Herod the Great. So we just, backing it up with information, right? So it said, and the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it be born. Now, yes, how I brought it out earlier, that you can look at this as Yahweh Shai, right? But this is still speaking that woman as the nation of Israel, right? But in this time, who was in that time? Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. And she brought forth a man-child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up by the Most High in his throne. So symbolically, it's speaking of Yahweh Shai. That's why I went to 2 points. I went to the one when Herod afflicted, he wanted to worship Yahweh Shai, which he was being crafty, but he didn't. So he afflicted the people of Bethlehem and the other reaching coast. Who was around Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. Then later on, Yahweh Shai prophesied in the time of the gospel that not one stone shall be left. So in that time, who was it? In the time of Vespasian and Titus, when they destroyed the temple. And who was getting afflicted? Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. And multiple Israelites from the southern kingdom fled to the African mountains, which later on goes into this chapter. So we seen in verse 5, Salaki, verse 5, she brought forth a man-child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. When we go back to the point of Herod didn't want him to rule because he was hearing that it was about to be a king, but that was not the time for Yahweh Shai to be a king. He was the sign of the king. That's why they said, Hosanna, Hosanna, which means he saves, right? Or save us. With the rod of iron, and her child was caught up to the Most High in his throne. What is that speaking about? We're going to go to the precept so you can understand. I gave you 2 points. The time of Herod, when he was afflicted to look for Yahweh Shai, but then the wise men mocked him, so we turned it out on the Judah, Benjamin, Levi, and then later on, it happened again. But this was the time of the temple being destroyed. So now, let's go to the book of Acts, the 1st chapter. Let's prove, because she said that her child was caught up unto the Most High and to his throne. This is Acts chapter 1 and verse 9. It says, and when he had spoken these things, while they beheld, he was taken up, and a cloud received him out of their sight. While they looked steadfastly towards heaven as he went up, behold, 2 men stood by them in white apparel, which also said, ye men of Galilee, why stand ye gazing up into heaven? This same Yahweh Shai, which was taken up from you into heaven, shall come in like manner as ye have seen him go into heaven. Wait, brother, I didn't see that he went up to the Most High in the throne. This is showing you the account when he went up. Let's show another point of prophecy in the book of Daniel, the 7th chapter. This is Daniel chapter 7, verse 13. And I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven, and came to the Ancients of Days, and they brought him near before him. That was fulfilled in the book of Acts, what we just read. So when we go back to Revelations 12, verse 5, and she brought forth a man-child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up with the Most High into his throne. Now verse 6. And when the woman fled into the wilderness, this wilderness is speaking about Africa, because when Yahweh Shai was born, what did the lady do? What did Joseph and Mary do? What did the father tell them to do? We read it in Matthew. Flee to Egypt in the African coast, right? Because Egypt is a part of it. Then, when you look at the time of what we read in Luke, where did the Israelites flee from that flood of that army in Revelations 12, which is later on in the chapter? they fled to the wilderness, which is in Africa, where she have a place prepared of the Most High, that they shall find her there 1,200 score days, which later on, when we understand in time, because it says they should find her. Who is the day that's going to find the nation of Israel there? That is speaking about the Edomites, because it said 1,203 scores, so 1,260. So when Rome fell, when they completely fell, the Edomites fell. The Lord Yahushua put them in the bottomless pit, the Europe land, right? The reason why it's a bottomless pit, because it's unbarren. It doesn't produce minerals, right? It's an unbarren land. So they went back as cave dwellers in Europe, right? For 1,000 years. Then eventually they start to rebirth what is called the Renaissance. So really, they started to slowly come into power in the 1300s and slowly afflict certain nations around them in the 1300s, but start to make a move towards this way between the late 1300s and the 1400s. And then in between, from the 1400s to the 1500s, they was already afflicting the southern and northern kingdom. Then eventually, fulfilling the 1600s, they brought the southern nation here. That's why when you see that movie, The Women King, where so-called Africans was being sold, it was real Hamites selling Africans that was mixed in with them, right? Because we still had different ways than the Africans. Regardless wherever Israelites is, they still have different ways, even if they cleave into the ways of the nation. Our swag is different, how we dress and how we look, right? Because if Israelites did not have the law and it was a falling away after Rome, how can these Edomites know the difference between these Hamites and the other Hamites that was calling themselves Hamites? How can they know the difference? Because even us in America, calling us African Americans, they never chose Africans and called them niggers, Negroes, right? And beat them from changing their names. Africans is just called Africans. They beat us from our names. And when you look at us, after all that time here now, why we change and swag and they didn't? We over brushing our hair, getting waves. We got swag. We got a better body odor. We take care of ourselves, right? We eat different food than them, right? Some of them is eating monkey. Some of them eating humans. Some of them is laying with animals. Jake is not about to go hump a damn animal. Jake is not eating a damn scarecrow. I mean, not a scarecrow, I'm sorry. A damn Vulcan, a damn owl, or a damn baboon. Them real blood bone Hamites, they be eating baboon. Now, Jake do eat lots of crab and shrimp. They do eat octopus, right? Guess what? In the Greek captivity, in the Rome captivity, lobster, crab, and shrimp was a poor man's meal. And this time it became something delicate, okay? So verse 7, let me see if I'm missing any point. Let me make sure. Okay, I just want to get this point because when we read verse 6, that the woman fled in the wilderness, I just want to get this point. The woman is Israel, and she fled to the wilderness, which is into Africa and other nations during 70 AD. When Rome destroyed Jerusalem, Matthew 24:15-16, and Luke, the 24th chapter that we just read. Flee into the mountains. A place prepared, the Israelites fled into the Western Africa or West Africa, where they dwelt before being scattered by the transatlantic slave trade 1260, 1,260, it says days, but it's really saying, it's really going into years. Like when you read Revelations, the 11th chapter, where it's basically saying that the nations seen their dead bodies 3.5 days, is meaning 350 years. So a prophetic 1,260 years of Israel's hidden condition, a time, times, and a half a time, symbolizing a long captivity under Gentiles' power, right? Because you even got, when we fell, because even when Rome fell, it was the Dark Ages, but by the time when Rome was trying to do the Renaissance, the Dark Ages was done. We were in a lower state, right? You had Ishmael and Hamites coming into power. Okay? So now, when we go to verse 7, it says, this is going into a future prophecy. And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought in his angels. So Michael is going to come when we look at Daniel, and I'm already there, Daniel chapter 12, verse 1. And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, when standing for the children of thy people, which is the Israelites, and there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation. Even to that same time, at that time thy people shall be delivered, and every one that shall be found written in the book of life. So, such as never since there was, that is talking about Jeremiah 30:7, Jacob's trouble. That's when Michael is going to stand up for us. And when he stand up, Michael and the angels, because simultaneously, Yahushua is there too. The angels, the other angels that's coming 10,000 of thousands and thousands, they going to be coming simultaneously with Yahushua. And they're going to fight with the devil and his angels. What is the devil angels? When we deal with America's allies, even though America allies is going to turn on the whore. Revelation 17, I believe, verse 16, they're going to turn on the whore and they're going to shoot their bombs at Babylon, with Russia, China, and Russia's allies is going to send all their nukes to Babylon. Okay? But simultaneously, 2nd Ezra, the 13th chapter, is when these nations is going to make war with Yahushua. Because if Michael coming down and you having a war with Michael, you having a war with Yahushua. Because Yahushua simultaneously is coming down. So I just want to get that point in 2nd Esdras to show that that's talking about Armageddon. Because if Michael coming down, let me get this, 2nd Esdras, the 13th chapter. I'm going to read this and then I'm going to shoot back up. This is 2nd Ezra chapter 13, verse 29. Behold, the days come when the Most High will begin to deliver them that are upon the earth. And he shall come to the astonishment of them that dwell on the earth. And one shall undertake to fight against another, one city against another, one place against another, one people against another, and one realm against another. So if Michael is coming to fight against the devil or the dragon, right, that's a realm against a realm. Now for you fools saying that's Michael fighting in the heavens in the 4th dimension, you bugged out. Everything is in order in the hands of the Lord. Right? War is happening on earth. Right? Because, let me go to my other Bible app. When you go to Ecclesiastes, the 3rd chapter, verse 16, it says, moreover, I saw under the sun the place of judgment, that wickedness was there in a place of righteousness, that iniquity was there. Under the sun is a place of judgment. So those angels of the dragon, their judgment is here on earth. So who is the angels with the dragon? That's the allies. All the nations that turn and try to make war with Yahushua and the angels, those are all the other nations, really the allies. Let's go back to 2nd Esdras, the 13th chapter, and start at verse 3. It says, and I behold, and lo, that great man waxed strong with the thousands of heaven. What's the thousands of heaven? Talking about the angels. It said a man. That man is Yahushua, but let's keep going. And when he turned his countenance to look, and all the things trembled that were seen under him. Because Yahushua is coming from the 4th dimension, the 3rd heaven. And whensoever the voice went out of his mouth, all they burned that heard his voice, like as the earth faileth when it filleth the fire. Because whatever he says, the chariot is going to do. Because it's going to shoot out lasers. Right? Because it said burn. It burned. It says, and after this I beheld, and lo, there were gathered together a great multitude of men out of number from the 4 winds of heaven to subdue the man that came out of the sea. Is this talking about the literal sea? No, it's speaking about the sea in space. Come on, man. Remember how they said the waters above? He's coming out of space, the sea above. So those underneath him, because when he arrived, the world, we're going to be underneath him. And those that are of the other nations, and you 2/3, you're going to tremble. It says, and whensoever the voice went out of his mouth, they all burned that heard his voice, like as the earth faileth when it filleth the fire. IUIC be saying it's literal fire. No, he's going to speak and the chariot is going to do. So the chariot is going to shoot out laser beams, right? That's like when Saul told David, give me 100 foreskins of the Philistine. That was a sharp sword coming out of Saul's mouth. But David was the one that did it. He's the one that physically cut the foreskin. So Yahushua is going to say, in that live being that he's riding in, the chariot, that's a mountain that we're going to read, is going to shoot out lasers, let alone the other chariots. Verse 5. After this I beheld, and lo, there was gathered together a multitude of men. Wait, Salaki. Verse 6. And I beheld, and lo, he had graven himself a great mountain, and flew up upon it. But I would have seen the region or the place where out the hill was graven, and I could not. So let's just use Mount Everest. Mount Everest is is the biggest mountain damn near on the earth that you could put in the water. It still don't touch the bottom of the ocean. But if it was to lift up, if anybody is on this live, if you watch Iron Man Ukraine, or no, not Iron Man Ukraine, Iron Man Ultra, where the robot in like the end of the movie, he lifted up a city. And he was trying to press the button so that when it came to a certain height, that as soon as he pressed the button, that land would fall and it would destroy a multitude of people. When you look at that TV show, you could look at that as a high mountain. But the mountain that Yahushua is going to have is going to be so big, it's going to cover a region. A region could be a country and it could be a state. But Yahushua going to ride on the fathership, a big mountain. It says, after this I beheld, and lo, all they that were gathered together to subdue him were so afraid, yes, durst fight. And lo, as he saw the violence of the multitude that came, he neither lifted up his hand, nor held a sword, nor any instrument of war. Right? You can go finish and read that. But this shows that it says that a multitude came. Now, when we read it before, it said the multitude came from all the corners of the earth. These is all the nations that got missiles, that got weapon artillery. They're going to be pointing at Yahushua and the angels. So we go back to Revelations 12 and 7. Now, I can give you other precepts, but that was plain. It says, and there was a war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, and prevailed not. Neither was their place found anymore in heaven. Really talking about their rulership, right? What does that go into? 2nd Ezra 6 and 9. You think Yahushua go come down, go in the building and say, hey, you're not the king no more. No. Daniel 7 says we're going to take the kingdom. So when Yahushua come, it's going to be a sacrifice. 2nd Ezra 6 and 9. For Esau is the end of the world. He's the end of this age. And Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. Right? The day of the Lord is darkness. Right? I just got to get this Zephaniah just to show. Because when the Lord comes, even with the missiles, when the chariots come down, it's going to be a huge massacre. How the Lord was killing people in the time of the flood. The Lord said he was going to never flood the earth again. He's going to come with fire. Zephaniah chapter 1 verse 6. And them that turn back from Yahweh Shem Shai, and those that have not sought Yahweh Shem Shai, nor require for him. 1 Peter 4 and 17. Judgment is going to happen first at the house of Yahweh Shem Shai, which is those that's claiming the truth. And then it's going to happen to those that didn't obey the truth. That's those niggas that's of the world. Hold thy peace at the presence of Yahweh Shem Shai power, for the day of Yahweh Shem Shai is at hand. For Yahweh Shem Shai have prepared a sacrifice. He have bid his guests. And it shall come to pass in the day of Yahweh Shem Shai's sacrifice that I will punish the princes, the king's children, and all such as are clothed with strange apparel. Right? First speaking about Israel, descendant-wise, the prince and the kings, and then the other nations, first dealing with Esau. But you have to know the kings and the nobles of Esau, they're going to be hiding in the bunkers. But like maybe somebody that was a president, congressman, a senate, right? If they're in a bunker in the United States, in the outskirts of the United States, or a bunker in Israel, they're going to be destroyed, right? Ezekiel 38, verse 17 and 19 shows you that Israel will be destroyed by fire, but they're going to be rebuilt, but they're going to be destroyed by fire. Verse 9, in the same day also will I punish all those that leap on the threshold, which fill their master's houses with violence and deceit. Right? Yahweh Shem Shai has a recording of all these things. Right? Of everything that have been done under the sun. So I want to make this point that we just read from Revelations chapter 12, verse 7. And let me read verse 9. And the great dragon, which is Rome 2.0, Daniel 7 and 8, the little horn, was cast out. That old serpent. That old serpent is the same spirit in the time of Adam and Eve. The same spirit that dwelled in Cain. The same spirit that dwells with Esau, the descendant of Isaac, which is actually consumed in him today. That old serpent called the devil is Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Right? Because now they're getting cast out of heaven. They're getting cast out of rulership. Right? And what? Most of the 1/3 of man, or the third part of man, is going to be destroyed through that war. And that's speaking, who's the third part of men? It's 3 types of men. The sons of God, the sons of men, which is the heathen race, and the Edomites, which is the sons of the wicked. That's the third part of man. So to give more sight, this represents a spiritual and prophetic war between the heavenly forces, Yahushua, the angels, and Michael, in Satan's system, Edom's rulership. So if Edom, you can't say Edom's not ruling, Because Ezra said that the end of Esau is the end of this world. When did Esau end? Revelations, the 13th chapter, was speaking of Rome being wounded and it healed. So if Rome healed, that means Rome is back. So we read Daniel's chapter 12 and 1, where it's basically going into Michael's stands for the children of Israel in the time of trouble. When we deal with the heaven, here symbolized rulership. So for the devil to be cast from heaven, that's going into his rulership. Going back to Daniel the 7th chapter, right? The dominion is going to be taken from them. The kingdom is going to be taken from them. When we look at, because I know this is part of the curse, but this is going to actually, Deuteronomy 28 verse 43, the stranger that is within thee shall get up above thee very high, and thou shalt come down very low. When we read in 2nd Ezra 6 and 9, for Esau is the end of the world, he was on high. Now he's about to come low. When you go to Luke, the 6th chapter, dealing with the rich man, the poor man in a purple garment, so it lines up with Revelation, the 17th chapter, speaking about that whore, and that rich man in Luke, the 16th chapter, is speaking about Esau Edom. He's in rulership. He's decked out. He's tender and delicate, right? He deceived the whole world, right? And the poor is Lazarus. Lazarus is a metaphor or symbolic to the nation of Israel. We are poor, bums, poor in spirit, without Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai. We are that painting woman in Revelations 12 that pains for deliverance. In all captivities, the Israelites, especially those that believe, they wanted to be delivered. So Ezekiel 9 and 4, the Thawa, which is spiritual, put the Thawa on the foreheads of those that sigh and cry. Who's crying to Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai? Right? It's the elect. When you look at Obadiah 1 and 4, though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, I will bring thee down. Who made a space station? Who said that they landed on the moon? Right? All synonymous to Esau being in rule. He's going to be pulled down. That's why the Jacob and Esau story was synonymous to Yahweh Shai. St. John chapter St. John 7 and St. John 5 and 39. You think the scriptures give you eternal life? They point to me, or they testify me. Now, Revelations chapter 12, verse 10 and 11. And I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now is come salvation and strength, the kingdom of our power, the power of his Hamashiach. For the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before our power day and night. Who was that? The dragon. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb. So those that have faith, they're enduring to the end. You endure to the end, what are you doing? You're overcoming the dragon by the blood of Yahweh Shai, because those elect is truly covered on this side. It says, and by the word of their testimony, they love not their lives unto death. Sirach 4 and 28. Strive for the truth until death, and Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai shall fight for you. Right? So, this is the triumph of Yahweh Shai and the elect of Yasharella over Esau in Satan's dominion. So we look at Revelation 11:15. The kingdoms of this world are become the kingdoms of our Lord. Right? Daniel the 7th chapter show you that. Daniel the 2nd chapter. His kingdom won't be given to another. His kingdom will have no end. Isaiah 45:17, right? A world without end. Because after Esau fall, Jacob's beginning, and it's never going to end. It's going to always exist, always to be. Woo-hoo-hoo. Right? They don't understand this. So the elect overcome by the blood of the Lamb, Yahushai's sacrifice, and by the word of their testimony, meaning the truth, in endurance unto death. So when we look at Revelations 13:14, we gonna end it. I might do a part 2. Got to make sure I get some sleep, y'all. I just wanted to deal because the whole TikTok joint was about the beginning part. So Revelations 12 and 13, when the dragon saw that he was cast into the earth, he persecuted the woman which brought forth the man-child. And to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness. This goes back to what we was reading earlier about she had a place planned for her. Revelations 12 is hopping, right? Because we already seen the downfall of Rome. So now it's going back. Because when Rome tried to persecute the Israelites and break down the temple, Israel was going into a decline because Titus and Vespasian is damn near in between the last Caesars ruling. Because after that, eventually, Jake is going to start ruling Rome at the end of his of all the other the 12 Caesars. Jake start to rule and start to get in the mix of things, right? Because you got to know, Jake was they were under Romans. They were cleaving, not all Jake, right? Because it was really those that were so-called proclaiming the faith, those that were still cleaving to the law. They was getting persecuted by Rome, right? It says that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place, where she is nourished for a time, and times and a half a time from the face of the serpent. This is going back to what we read earlier. Let's go back up so that you could tell that this bounced, right? Verse 7 is not it. Verse 6 is going back to verse 6. It does the same thing in Revelations the 20th. Revelations chapter 20, verse 1 and 3 is speaking about right before the Renaissance, right? The bottomless pit when Rome fell, right? The chains was released, or they were in chains. Then when you go back, they're gonna rule for a point in time. Then when you jump to verse, I think 7 and 8, that goes back into the let me make sure so I don't butcher it. So verse 1 and 3 is speaking of the angel that had the key of the bottomless pit, which is Yahushai. The great chain in his hand is where Esau was subdued in a lower state. Because when you read Revelations 1 and 18, and you go to the Greek word for key, it's kleis in the Greek. Kleis, K-L-I-C-E. It means authority or power. So Yahushua had the power to put you in hell or to death. So he put the whole nation of Edom in hell, which was a condition. He put them in the bottomless pit, which is an unbarren land, and chains of darkness is where they was in a lower state, where they could not deceive the nations. It is said, and he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent. The dragon is Rome. The old serpent is the nation of Edom that has that spirit of the old serpent in the garden, which is the devil, liar, manipulator, deceiver, Satan, which is the head ruler in the spiritual aspect on the left-hand side, and bound him 1,000 years. So when Esau was bound, right, they wasn't able to do what? Verse 4, that he should deceive the nations no more till the 1,000 years should be fulfilled, after that he must be loosed a little season. That's when the Renaissance came. So right now we're in that little season. When the Renaissance came all the way to now, this is that little season. Really, the little season is the horn. Renaissance had to happen first, get established to bring forth the little horn, because the little horn stems out of Britain, which is connected to Rome. Because the Renaissance means rebirth of Rome. The rebirth of what? The rebirth of Rome. Okay? To bring forth the same 7 heads in the 10 horns, which accumulates the NATO European Union. When you drop down to 6 and 7, or 7 and 8, it says, when the 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of prison. These are the Edomites. Now it's about to go into the Renaissance, the rebirth of Rome, right? Satan was that dragon, Rome. And when you read the book of Babylon and Timbuktu, it even tells you that when Europe started to get developed, they didn't have no economic wealth. They didn't have no military might. So it was going through stages. That's why the big face of the Europeans coming to power was the Pope. When the Pope start getting his rule, start doing this, start having authority, that's when shit started to come, where they started to make alliance with France, Britain, and Spain. But that was just to bring back the old allies, right? And 7 lines in with this future moment. But let's stay back on topic. So I showed you that verse 6 is verse 6. And the woman fled into the wilderness. This is when Rome started persecuting the 12 tribes. So we drop down 13. It said he persecuted the woman which brought forth the child. Verse 14, and the woman was grieved. The woman was given, and to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place, where she is nourished for a time, in times and a half time, from the face of the serpent. It's talking about Rome. And the serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away of the flood. This is speaking of the Roman army. The flood is the Roman army. And the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened up her mouth and swallowed up the flood which the dragon cast out of her mouth. Right? What was the earth that swallowed her? In Western Africa. The communities that's in Africa swallowed them up. We started to blend in with the people. And the army started to get consumed by the people, because now they mixed. Oh man, who are they? And then, and again, when all empires flourished, when the Israelites was in subjection unto them. Verse 17. And the dragon was wroth with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which kept the commandments of the Most High, and have the testimony of Yahushua and Mashiach. They was persecuting the Israelites because of this truth. It was still going out. But you have to understand it, when that thing happened, then the falling away came. When they destroyed the temple and we blended here, the falling away of the truth, which fulfilled 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 3. Right? The revealing of the Son, it won't happen until the falling away come to pass, and then the man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. We're in the time of the man of sin being revealed, the son of perdition. We're in that time now. But when the temple fell, the Rome persecution, getting swallowed up in Africa, that started the falling away. Because then nobody was teaching, no more prophets. Really, when John the Revelator, because he was the last apostle. Okay? So we damn near just broke down the whole 12th chapter. So after Rome fell, when we deal with Revelations 12, 13, 14, after Rome fell, the dragon, the Edomites, continued persecuting Israel. So they already fell. Because you have to understand, Vespasian and Titus, another Caesar, and I think another Caesar. Actually, we can get it. Right? Let's make sure. What Caesars ruled after Titus and Vespasian before the fall of Rome? Let's see if it can give me this information. So, So, until the collapse of Rome, Western Empire in 476 AD, Vespasian from 69-70 D, and then Titus 79 to 81 AD, Domitian or Domitian from 81 to 96 AD, the younger brother of Titus, and the 5 good emperors from 96 to 180 AD. This period was Rome's height in power and peace and organization. Narva, 96 to 86 AD. Trojan, 98 to 170 to 117 AD. Basically, the empire into its greatest extension. Hadrian, 1117 to 138 AD. It built Hadrian's Wall in Britain. The anonymous Pius, 138 161 AD. A peaceful reign. Marcus Aladarus, probably pronouncing his last name wrong, but it was Marcus, 161 AD to 180 AD. A philosopher king, fought the Germanic tribes. The Severan and crisis period, 180 to 284 AD. After Marcus, the empire began to decline due to corruption, civil war, and invasion. Commodus, 180 to 192 AD. Septimius, 193 to 211 AD. Caracalla, 211 to 270 AD. You can fact check. I'm probably pronouncing them wrong. The Roman Reform, 284 to 337 AD. Late Roman Empire, 337 to 476. After Constantine and the empire split permanently, the Eastern Roman Emperor, the Byzantine Empire, this is when This is when the Israelites, when the Dark Ages started to come into play, where Jake was ruling Italy, Europe, Ireland, and that continued for over 1,000 years until 1453. But in between that, you had Europeans coming into power, right? Yeah, you had Europeans coming into power. I think I went into that to another live. So again, after Rome fell, the dragon Esau continued to persecute Israel through the Holy Roman Empire, Spanish Inquisition, slavery, and colonization. 2 wings of a great eagle, symbolic to the Most High, giving Israel protection and guidance in her flight. In Revelations 15:16, the serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the women. The flood is really going into the army, right? But right here is trying to say false doctrine, lies, destruction from the enemy. The lies such as Christianity, the image of Hamashiach, the image of Caesar Borgia as the false history. The earth helping the women. The Most High used other nations and lands to preserve Israel's seed in records by being completely wiped out. But really, you got to understand that Israel was, especially right when the Europeans, when Esau got back into power in the Renaissance, they came and got majority of a lot of the southern kingdom in the African western mountains. but it don't take away because when the Rome ruled, they ruled known lands. So the southern kingdom was in multiple places, but thousands of Jews fled from the persecution in the land of Judea. But there was other Israelites in other lands, Macedonia, Chittim, Babylon, because Rome ruled the known land, right? They conquered the Babylonian land, the Persian Medes land, the Greeks land. Israelites were scattered to known lands. But in the time of the persecution, when the temple got destroyed, in the time of Titus and Vespasian, Jake was scattered four corners. That's why Paul had a missionary to go to all the churches of Asia. So all Jake wasn't in Judea. No, it was scattered everywhere. So when you understand, when the Byzantine Empire came, Jake was coming from out of these known lands that Rome ruled. That's why when you look at Gladiators, the second one, you know, they started, like the apostle said, they started to have history aligned because Jake tried to maneuver in the ranks and come into power. You know? So, Lord willing, I was edified, but the point was really Revelation chapter 1, verse 6, so that y'all can understand, you know, if you don't understand prophecy, don't hurt yourself. This Revelation chapter 19, right? I still got to sharpen myself too. This Revelation 19 and 10. It says, and I fell at his feet to worship him, and he said unto me, see, thou do it not. I am thy fellow servant and of thy brethren that have the testimony of Yahushai. Worship the Most High, for the testimony of Yahushai is the spirit of prophecy. You know? But outside of that, you got to study, and you got to watch videos, man. I didn't get this sitting on my own, you know. Of course it came in notes, you know. Some of y'all could have been confused when I was trying to show the point of Harad and pinning the point of the third stars, because even Harad afflict Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. Then I even showed you a future representation of that verse, where Yahushai said that not one stone shall be left. And in the time of Vespasian and Titus, when they destroyed the temple, who was they afflicted? Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. That was the main point, because in there on TikTok, they was thinking that those three stars was the angels, that Satan, that dragon, brought down the third part of the stars in the heavens where the Heavenly Father is at. No, that's impossible. Okay? So, Lord willing, that was edifying. It was edifying for me. Lord willing, you know, I didn't have this thought that we was going to go into this. But hey, Yahweh Shema Shai has amazing ways to make sure his point get across. Lord willing, it's edifying. If I slip the tongue, hey, through the Spirit, Yahweh Shema Shai is going to have me get corrected. But we want to give all praises facing the east to Yahweh, by Hashem, Yahweh Shai, by Hashem Rakakwadash. Again, if it pertains to any history or line thing I said, brothers that's watching, you correct the point. Brothers that's not in sound doctrine, I am not talking to you, okay? So double honors to the elder apostles and the elders of great millstone who rule well and teach well through the Spirit. A mighty shalom to the hopeful elect in the same spirit and in sound doctrine. Shalom to the Akwaf, the sisters of his faith. Continue to pursue your lot. Lord willing, Yahweh Shema Shai has mercy on the other brothers and sisters that's not in faith. Shalom, shalom, abba, abba.